Number one, 2K21. I don't have a little screen, which I have made, and I must have not included it in this. And I don't know. I don't know. It just fell apart in the last minute. I think I was too excited. But this game technically released in 2019, but it got a significant, which is what I was hinting at the start of this. It got a significant boost, or an update, at the start of the. I think it was. I can't remember if it was March or April, I think. Can't quite remember. It could have even been May, in fact. But it was just such a significant upgrade that it changed the game, and it changed the entire game and how I perceive the game. And that game, number one game, 2K21. I hope I'm saying that right. 2K21, Disco Elysium, the final cut. Emphasis on the final cut. Because the previous Disco Elysium, which I played last January or last Christmas, or coming into this January, yeah, start of the year, I think. I played the entire game straight through with what was minimal voice lines. I think they had only one voice line per character then when they were saying like maybe something substantial. But now the final cut introduced added areas in the game, a few different new features in the game, updated the UI, but the main draw, it included brand new voicing. So it had the entire game is voice acted now. No, so it's not just I spent the game reading this like a book, and it has, I think, hundreds of thousands of lines of so many lines. I think they said there's over 1 million voice lines in the game now because they've added voicing. But the voicing is phenomenal. It's so phenomenally good. Each character really comes to life. I don't know how to explain the update. And it's kind of like if you've played Disco Elysium, the original, compared to playing the updated, the final cut version with the fully acted voice lines, you would know what I'm talking about, and you would know how it kind of brings the game from an absolutely phenomenal, stellar game as it was, just into like an upper echelon, just untouchable in just modern RPGs. It's incredible. And what I said about it in my write-up was that it was the most well-written game ever made, and I stand by that. It is phenomenal. Just period. It's just phenomenal. And I consider Disco Elysium a real bookworms game. It's kind of like for people who are into books, they would transition perfectly. Yeah, it's a murder mystery at heart, and people who are really into books and bookworms would transition perfectly into like Disco Elysium's world building and storytelling. It's a real intellectual game where you play as like a down and out detective, like you're investigating a murder in kind of like this post-war derelict city, all while kind of examining and managing your own sort of like psyche and morality. So yeah, move aside Divinity 2, there's a new king in town. I would always consider Divinity 2 as one of the best RPGs of all time, but now I consider Disco Elysium is the best RPG I have ever played.
Play it how you want to.
Yes.
So you can play it as like you pick like different kind of characteristics, like how you want to play as the main character. So you can be like someone who is kind of playing up to be
only one thing is certain.
Top,
if you work with him, you're going to get it back. And working with him might be the only way to do it.
On different things and everything, and it's absolutely fascinating.
Thank you for the hot tip regarding your lost gun, Harry. My men have indeed factored in that you pawned it.
Your interactions
now,
with
please,
them, and
let the professionals do their job. Kick back, Harry, relax. I have great guys on this. You focus on what's important, building our relationship for the good of Martinez.
Like as even an example on the screen even now.
Damn it, Harry. That's exactly what it means. I'm only kidding, of course.
Options to pick.
Of course. I understand. We had you, you had us.
And it will prompt on what they want to do. So obviously depending on the style of character you have, and then on top of
you need this to get in and out through the gate.
On how many how you want to do this conversation even. It's so in depth. I think I played it.
You're one of us now. A real red and white union man.
Take care, that's right. And the game remembers your choices from what you've had with the conversation with people. So it remembers what you chose, and that goes into like your morality system. And so I would say so the game is based in like a post-war sort of depression French Revolution style location, but it also has this kind of like Soviet era sort of Soviet style flavor to it. You play as because that's the idea of the game, is that you're trying to find out your name because you're this kind of so drunken sort of like down and out cop. So you're also trying to solve this murder, and you're going through your own sort of identity crisis, but you don't know your name. So part of the game is you wake up and you don't know who you are, and you're trying to remember your name, but you also realize that you've lost your badge and you've lost your gun. So you can be a hero or an absolute disaster, which is the main subtext to the game. And it's true, you can be whoever you want to be in this game, and it has its own kind of political systems and its ideologies, and you can have like communist views, or you can have real kind of like consumerist capitalist views, or you can be kind of like more centrist. You can play the game as you can choose to be like a more violent person and choose the violent options. There's a lot of it talks about very kind of the sensitive topics now, in the sense that there's a lot of like, it talks about fascism and racism and the morality between them two, and being like ultra liberal. It just has a lot of these kind of very sensitive issues that it deals with, but it deals with them. It's the way it deals with them. That's why the games deal with alcoholism and drug use in their own way, and it has like their own kind of political ideologies in games. But Disco Elysium's the sort of the ideas behind them are so well written, and it handles them so sensibly, and it allows you to choose what you want to be, that it doesn't mess around with those topics. It handles them really maturely, and that's why I think that this game is like so mature. It's just, it doesn't, I don't know, it doesn't, not that it doesn't deserve, but it has no right in being as kind of like forward thinking and mature about these topics as it really is. It's so good, but that's only its ideas. I mean, how the gameplay, it's an isometric RPG, and the moment to moment gameplay sees you just walk around a town on the outskirts of like this city, and you just talk to people, you discover objects, you interact with them, try and uncover clues to the murder that's happening, and you have to investigate people and interrogate them. There's no combat in Disco Elysium, which is also another kind of unique sort of elements to it's how it handles there is combat, but it's not in like a fighting kind of like combat. It's a combat of the brain and in conversation. You're trying to like trip people up when you investigate them and kind of outwit them with your responses to their questions, and it's just so smart. It's so incredibly intellectual. It's a real intellects game. So quests, so like you get quests and different interactions, and they're completed by rolling 2d6 and then adding them to like your ability modifiers, kind of like a Dungeons and Dragons inspired. And you get like bonus for those modifiers depending if you want to choose more intellectual or if you're more kind of like about your psyche. You have your physics as well, like your physical strength, or like your perception and like how you react to certain things, your reaction times.
Of this quarterly journal features a large satirical
it's
portrait
just the stats are broken down into four main
Freezer.
sections: those intellect,
From the
psyche,
sides of his
physique,
head,
and
a
motives,
pair of white
of which each are broken down even
antlers
further, and there's
spread to the
24
corners of the
overall
cover.
skills. So you can have logic,
Because
empathy,
Freezer was
endurance,
incompetent,
reaction speed,
foolish,
and these
cruel.
individual stats govern
In short,
the kind of
the
checks that
embodiment
you're
of
required to
everything
make
the
for a given
communards
task.
wished
So
to
depending on which one
overthrow,
is better, you
its
have higher
satire,
chance
you
of
see.
passing those tasks with certain
To your
characters in an
disappointment,
interrogation,
there aren't
or
any
if it's on
full-colour
the street
pictures
trying
to
to
direct
open a
your
bin,
attention.
for example, or it
Just
could be anything.
column after column of closely set text, interrupted occasionally
Gives
by
such
little
a
doodles
replayability
in black
to
and
it.
white.
It does.
Because
No
also depending on
advertisements
what like
you notice.
stats you have
So
to
who's
start
funding
with and
this
what you
radical
add into
commentary?
as you go on.
After rifling the
depends on how you
pages
play
with
the
your
game.
thumb
Like, if you fail
several
your check
times, you return to
it'll
the
give you
table of
requirements that
contents.
you have to
The
action
magazine is
before you get
divided
back
into
there. So you
several
gotta go talk to
sections.
other people,
International
you gotta go do
development,
things in a different order
Kunst
the
und
first time you
Kultur,
do it. Because I even
and
know
local
when I
concerns.
played it and you were watching
Just
me play
inside the cover,
it was
there's
so
also
like,
an editor's
some
note.
conversations you were
Comrade,
like, I
as
never
you
got
know,
these options.
this journal
True.
takes its
Yeah.
name from Mezov's
Collect
immortal
some of the things
expression,
or see things
Du
that I
cristal
found or
alla
did any,
fume.
like some of the
This
things I
was
didn't
his
do.
way of
Or I
describing the
did
way
do,
the
you were
rigid,
kinda like, oh, this is
crystalline
different to when
structures
I
of
did it.
capitalist
That is true
ideology
as well.
turned to smoke under
About
communism.
like playability of it. 'Cause you're
But
playing it
like the
through for your
structures
second
of
time
capitalist
even.
ideology,
Yeah.
we
Yes,
too
you now
are at
know
risk
what
of
the
going à la
storyline
fume,
is, but you're
unlike
getting
many
different
publications which are content
interactions, you're
to
getting a different
spoon-feed their readers
experience.
reassuring
Absolutely, it's a different
drivel.
experience,
La
and
Fume
depending
is
even on how
committed
you
to
choose to
telling
build
the
your
radical
character.
truth,
If you have more
even
strength, you
when
want to like
that
take more
truth
people
may
on
drive away
physically,
potential
in
subscribers.
confrontations, and
Only
even in like
4
knocking
issues
doors
in,
down,
and it sounds like
and
they've
you have
already
intimidation as well. You can take
alienated their
intimidation
readership.
checks, and you're more
Perhaps they've
implied
overestimated
to
the market
pass them
demand
if you have
for this
higher
kind of
skills in
commentary.
those. But if not, then you
So
have to like
please,
find another way
if you
around it. If
value
you
our
have good
radical
perception,
Mazovian
you can
perspective
perceive
on
that they're
contemporary
telling a
politics,
lie, and
culture,
then you get
and
around it that way,
international
sort of. So
affairs,
there's two ways to play the
please
game. There's
consider
actually
subscribing
multiple ways to play the
today.
game, and just
What
like
do
you
you
said,
expect?
each character you
It
come
was
across in
laying
the game will
around
have
the office
different
of
kind
the
of
Devadas
skill
Union.
checks to
They'll
pass.
probably be
So
bank players
it makes you have to weigh up the best
You flip
option
back
to
to the
extract
front of the
information from
magazine.
them,
The
and you
table
lose
of
HP in like
contents
two
unfolds
categories.
before
There's
you.
two ways to lose HP. There's
This
your physical
section
health, and then
includes
there's your
a
mental
long,
health.
tedious
So
critique
your
of
morale
the
kind of
latest
system,
round
and both
of
can be
free
bolstered
trade
or hampered
negotiations between
with
the
drugs,
EPIS
alcohols,
nation
pharmaceuticals, and
the
even the
Free
clothes
State
you
of
wear,
Seminine.
like increase or
You
decrease
also
certain
skip
character
over an article
skills and
about heavy
stats.
fuel oil
And you, if
smuggling
you say
along the
lose a
Messina
conversation with
border.
like a child,
Something
you take a
about
hit to like your
their
mental
residence in
health,
Samara
and if that depletes,
requires
then you
you
run the
work
risk of
hard.
having a heart attack because you
Face
are
it,
very
you
unhinged
really
in this
aren't
game.
interested in foreign
So-
affairs.
which in essence,
You're
if you
not
have a heart
even
attack,
sure
that's like
where
game
most of
over,
these
and then
countries
like you gotta
are.
like essentially
You flip
start
back to the front of the
another
map.
save
It
file.
takes a
So,
moment,
or
but
like you
gradually
reload
it
back.
dawns on you
It's an
that
incredibly innovative way to
Kunst und
tackle
Kultur
sort of health and
must
combat in a
mean
game, which I've never
arts
really
and
seen
culture.
before.
Why they
Especially
decided
boss
to title
fights.
this one
So
section in Volda
the footage in
is
the
beyond
the
me.
background that you're watching
Obviously,
with
because
Everard
it's
Clare, he's
cool
like the
to drop
union
random
boss, and like
phrases
that's
in
essentially a
foreign
boss fight in
languages.
itself.
It
So for
evokes a
instance,
sense of
conversations are
recognition and
longer than
fellowship
normal
among
characters, and
those
it tests your
privileged
mettle.
enough to
So you got to
understand.
choose like the right
As you leaf
thing
through this
to
section,
say,
you come
or else
across
he's going to take
several
advantage of that.
reviews of recent radio
So it's
plays,
essentially an
as well
endurance
as a
test.
brief
Make
artist
sure you have like the
spotlight
right
featuring a local
decisions,
artist
or you're going to
identified
keel over
only
and have a
as
heart attack and die.
CS.
Um,
The main
Yes,
feature,
the remarkable feat of the game is the
titled
overall
Tip Top
narrative.
Tourney, a critical Mazovian
It's
perspective.
like the political and existential themes
The actual
that it delves
article
into.
is
So I think like
surprisingly
Disco
light
Elysium doesn't
on
really shy
details,
away from
but
sensitive
after
issues or
skimming a
extreme
page or
views,
two,
like we
you
were saying.
gather that it has something to
But
do
it's
with
its
motorcarriage
handling
racing.
and its
If
empathy
you
of
don't
those
follow
issues
it,
that make
you
it
only
shine
ever hear
above.
about
The writing is just
ludicrous
exemplary in
sponsorships
this game.
and obscene death
Impeccable,
toll.
and it's a real bookworm
You
game.
think you're settling in
And it
for
marries
a
together
relaxing
this
recap
kind of
the
system of
most
the game, like
recent
the thought
season,
cabinet.
maybe sprinkled
So it's a
with
kind of a
some nice
level up
anecdotes about a few
mechanic,
of the more
cabinet,
colourful drivers.
mechanic that it kind of allows you to think about
Instead, you
thoughts
find yourself skimming
with your
a
character in
10,000
game, of
word
course,
feature about
for a
all the
duration, and gives you
politically
perks
problematic
and drawbacks
aspects
to
of
certain
Tip Top
skills.
Tourney.
The game delves in on
Where
like
to even
taxation
start?
and economic
For one,
systems and
there's
like
the crass
politics and racism
commercialism
and
of its
sexism and
sponsorships.
alcoholism and so
And
many
then
other
there's
mature
the practically
themes.
criminal emphasis on
And
deadly
a couple of
motor
these with like
crashes.
outstanding cast of voice actors and like really captivating voices. Especially
Oddly
of
enough,
the
this
narrator in the
article
game,
has two bylines.
Lenville Brown, I think his
Nesta
name is.
Colada Bernal
That's yes,
and
the kind of like
Exodus
narrates your
There's no
thoughts
way
as the
those
game
are
kind of
real
goes on, and
names.
it's kind of taken from that sort of level. But
Have you
it's
ever
like
met anyone
an
named
ASMR
Exodus?
masterclass. His voice is
Come
so
on,
soothing.
they're
It's really
plainly
deep.
pseudonyms.
It's incredibly performed. And
Under
the murder
capitalism,
mystery of the
the
game
article
as well
says,
is genuinely
every
gripping.
pursuit
Like
has
finding
its
out
price.
who committed
Every
the
pleasure,
murder, the
even one
twists
as
and the
elemental
turns
as
in
the
it throughout
joy
the
of
game.
racing others
Honestly, I
around
was
the track
hooked on the story from like, who did what, where. Like, it was just so genuinely gripping. I felt like I was reading like an insanely good book. It just keeps you genuinely interested in the story, and it never really lets up. The pacing is always really great. I think I took about 50 hours my first playthrough. Oh no, sorry, that's a lie. I took 35 hours. I was 15 hours into my second playthrough. Yeah, it just maintains great pacing and introduces some of the most memorable characters we've seen in years. And I think even they've said that they were interested in making a Netflix show about it, or there was talk of making it into like a Netflix. That's how like good it would translate.
One cannot avoid the conclusion.
I think so too. And the best bits of the game, the thought cabinet mechanic, is just really brilliantly conceptualized from a design standpoint. It just really makes the themes come alive in the game, and it can easily be built upon and expanded in previous games with relationships with different thoughts and link them together with other
there
thoughts.
You have it.
The soundtrack brings the kind of seaside world that it is and all of its inhabitants to life. The soundtrack is really good. It just fits really well into the game. It's so bizarre, but it's also so really good. It also has a really fresh, forward-thinking HP and morale system. It's a really intelligent way of tackling that, and a great design system. How that works,
with articles declaring
the mechanical
unqualified
health
support
in the game
for the
is
dock workers'
really
strike.
well implemented. Yeah, it's
skim
really
the
excellent.
headlines,
And
paint
it has
the
a
harbour
memorable
red and
cast
white.
of wonderfully voiced
Martinez
characters.
tames the wild
Really
pines.
good. A deep and thoughtful
city
topics
in
explored
revolt.
both empathetically
First,
and
we take
evocatively to
Martinez,
astonishingly
then we take
to
La
astonishing
Delta.
effect. It's just
Finally, there's a brief
the
article
topics
by the
explored are
writer,
brilliant, and they
G.
do it in
Martin,
such a
accusing
kind of
the
like a
owner
mature
of the
and
Capeside
sensitive sort of way
apartments
that
of
not
illegally
too.
attempting
It can
to
be
evict
also like as
certain
offensive as you
communist
want to be because it
tenants
delves like
simply
it's
for
not
not
afraid. It's a
having
warts and all
paid
kind of
their
game,
rent.
but it doesn't cast opinions on those topics itself. It asks you to cast the opinion. And that's what my opinion that I got from the game is that they weren't coming from it from like one side or
According
the
to
other.
these
It was like
editorials, there
kind of
can
like
be no
down the
accommodation
middle
with
of
the
the line and
forces
asked
of
you what you
international
thought of
capital
like
or
extremist
their
views and
mucilaginous
racism.
allies
Asks
in the
you
coalition.
can literally be any kind of cop you want in this game. Now,
Judging
the
from
downer
the
part of the
context,
game, as I would say,
it's
is
something
there are
very
some
large
sort
and
of like this is a little bit
You should
spoilery.
probably know about it
Kind of,
already,
but not really.
honestly.
There are some sort of
flip back to
sci-fi
the front of
elements
the magazine.
in the game,
table of
such as like
contents unfolds before
Tiago,
you.
who's like this kind of like a kind of a lurker, kind of like he's kind of like this alien thing that kind of hangs out in like the church. And then there's like this Insulindian phasmid, it's called in the game, which is like this giant bug which is like as tall as a house, and it just doesn't really explain those characters as well, and it does. I'm not sure if it fits into the world. It kind of does in a sense because the world is kind of sci-fi-ish in a sense, but it's not really presented in sci-fi. It feels like it could exist in the world. It is kind of steampunky, but they weren't explained as to why this weird sci-fi kind of alien lurking in like a church roof and like this massive bug the size of a house. It just didn't really like the idea of the game that the game presents this giant psychic bug to you, but doesn't explain or divulge why it exists in that world or in the history of the world. It's kind of odd. So you kind of just brush over it, and it's like you're not really presented that this is a sci-fi world. Yet these weird things exist in it to no effect or to an effect in a sense because they kind of tie into the story in some sense, but they're not explained, and you're left wondering like, what kind of world is this, and why isn't that explained?
And the same materials being handed over to companies inside Revachol.
Yeah, why is this bug the size of a house, which you come across towards the end of the game? Spoilers.
Where the imports are being sold.
Yeah.
It's hard to make sense of this thicket of company names, dates, quantities, and percentages. You try to focus, but the lines are getting blurry.
Car work.
The drawer slides shut, smooth.
A bit futuristic, but also very like steampunky. So, like when you do come across like kind of elements that you're kind of like, oh, like this is kind of outside what I expected it to be. It's kind of like, oh, okay, this is new, but it doesn't go further, as you say. Like it just kind of stops.
Yeah, you're right. It really doesn't, and that's kind of bizarre as well. That's my only kind of downside to it. I read an interview with the designer as well before, He says that they want to make another game in the Disco Elysium universe, but like to explore more combat. I think they're saying, or have like they're talking about like exploring the idea of like having different themes in it, or yeah, it just sounded amazing, and we would absolutely welcome another game in this universe. Disco Elysium is one of my favorite games, like top 10 of all time. It's so incredibly evocative. It's just so well thought out. I would summarize the game as it being a groundbreaking RPG that pushes the boundaries of video games as an art form. Like, it's truly phenomenal. Truly phenomenal. It's brilliant.
It's just aesthetically pleasing, both sound and visuals. I love the artwork of this.
Yeah, the kind of paintbrush kind of. Yeah.
Nothing happens when you try to.
So you have like the general visuals, and you have the up close visuals, like when you do the headshots and one or two other things. Like it's so interesting to see the different like structures, and even like the movement is kind of like a click and point movement. It's not like a mouse movement.
An isometric RPG style.
It also depends on what you can like interact with and what you can see. It really is, like, as I say, truly phenomenal. It's so good.
It is. It's incredible, and what a way to end off the show with this game. Everybody who has ever played a game should own this. That being said, I don't think it is for everybody. If you don't enjoy, well, when I played the game, I read about 1 million lines in this game, but it's so captivating that it's just worth it. It's an incredible game. If anybody's into point and click or strategy games or kind of slow burn, it's a slow burn. There's no combat in it. It is kind of, yeah.
But it's cozy. Like, you can sit back, like, you're not like forward, like looking at where you're going, where you're doing things. Like,
it's not reactionary.
You're able to sit back and take your time. So when conversations do show up, you can do it. You could probably play it blind, like you just click it random if you really wanted to.
True.
In order to see what happens. Like, it's a very explorative game.
Yeah.
And even like there's a lot of like little missions that you can go through, or you can just stick to kind of the main like mission day, and that like some things you have to kind of do to kind of push through, but like it's just a very explorative game. And like as someone who hasn't finished it yet myself, like I'm not like sad that I haven't finished it, but it's also a game that I'm more than happy to sit down at any time, I think, to play it.
Well, and saying that segues perfectly into it's also available on Switch. So there's no excuse really. You can play this on the toilet, as some of the protagonist has as well in the game. You could be a down and out washout or an absolute hero, rockstar cop. And I think that's pretty much it. That's the Game of the Year show. Disco Elysium, the final cut. Game of the Year, 2K21, baby. We back next year. Maybe even earlier than that, not next year. But we'll look at doing some more reviews, I think. We do, yeah.
Like new games upcoming?
Absolutely. 100%. But as we let Disco Elysium play out in the background, I actually have this little thank you very much end screen. Thank you for people who have listened in, who are watching this, if it's a past stream, if you didn't join us live or couldn't join us live and just wanted to listen to us back. We made this just really for our friends, for ourselves as well, and hopefully that with just the idea that our friends would see this and people who we talk to about games, and we can just recommend games. If we haven't seen them, they would be interested in just playing the same games that we're interested in. But yeah, you can find us if you're here. You know that my name is @SirJoeySavage, and I'm on Medium as the same name, and I'm on Steam and Discord, and you can also find Wendy on Pumpkin Patch Twitch. She streams The Sims, very cozy Sims builds.
Sims. I'm doing it, and like next year, like definitely an exploration of everything on Game Pass. So yeah, it's definitely
variety streamer.
Nice little variety, as I say, like a pumpkin patch is a pumpkin of every size, and that's what the games are. It's something of every kind.
Yeah, absolutely. But thank you so much for that. That was the Game of the Year show 2K21, baby. We made it through. We'll be looking forward to loads of cool games next year. Hopefully a Disco Elysium 2, although that won't be for years. But yeah, we have so much to look forward to, and games are just insane right now, and they're only getting better. So yeah, thank you, and in the spirit of it all, Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year, and I can't wait for next year's show already. Yeah.
Thank you guys so much.
Absolutely. Okay, thanks guys. Bye.